As well throw them documents in the trash can because we're not following that at all. So when we got the standards last week in United States government, I'm looking, I'm like, my eyes must be deceiving me. One of the standards said, 15G, if I'm not mistaken, said, pair the nonviolence of Dr. King and the civil rights movement with the violence of the Black Power movement. Verbatim. That's exactly how I responded. So it doesn't look like I'm trying to make things woke because I understand optics matter. I work with white staff members on the TA to help me rewrite the standard. Mind you, I'm not an expert. I don't have a doctorate or a master's degree in Africana studies or anything like that. I got a law degree. That's about it. So I write it to say something like, identify the Black Power movement, including the political strategies, the influence on culture. You know, I kind of fleshed it out a little bit more.
What's happening? Why are people trying to rewrite history is the question, right? So when I was a kid, for a time I went to Catholic school, like third and fourth grade. And in Catholic school, they taught you about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now, 30 to 40 years later, people say Jesus is God now, and the Holy Spirit don't exist. Why is that? Indoctrination. So I say that to say the reason, like they have been trying to take like Black history out of school and rewrite Black history is because, for one, America is failing on its own, right? And you brought all these other groups of people in here, and you don't want Black people talking about reparations, so you want to change the history. Like, oh, they came as, what did these fools say slavery was? We were immigrants. You get what I'm saying? We came as immigrants, like migrant workers and whatnot. And they put that in, tried to put that in books, or they did put it in books maybe a couple of years ago, because that was an issue. Now, like she said, now you want to rewrite the civil rights movement. Interesting. It's interesting because the rewriting history is trying to give a underbelly, give a foundation to, I never owned slaves and my family never owned slaves, and there was no such thing as Jim Crow. See, like you skip slavery, like slavery existed, but you try to rewrite that, then you completely ignore Jim Crow and you go right to civil rights and act like, oh, Black people were being unruly. It's gonna start with Martin Luther King and the peaceful thing to the violence of the Black Panthers. Like, interesting, ain't it? Interesting. But you see this all the time. And when I say you see this all the time, you got adults still wrestling with the fact that Christopher Columbus didn't discover the United States of America. He landed in the Caribbean. But the United States of America still has a holiday, right? Interesting. Then we talk about all of these historical things, historical issues that happen in America. And then you see all these groups of other ethnicities trying to recreate the civil rights movement. Even now, you saw like Somalis and Hispanics, I think, going to Selma and marching. So it's gonna so at some point they want to transition. MLK, Malcolm X. You see, Malcolm X ain't even in the civil rights movement part. You don't hear Medgar Evers. They basically pushed Rosa Parks out. You get what I'm saying? Everybody else that was involved, now that I think about it, you don't even know what the Deacons of Defense is. Recently, they brought up the Southern Poverty Law Center getting in trouble for funding the KKK, which, I mean, I didn't look at the whole story, but I could be wrong, but it looked like they were paying informants, you know. But even that, why do you have to pay informants? Because what I thought, but it's you paying people involved in terrorist organizations in America, basically. And the reason why it wasn't a big deal is because there were white terrorist organizations in America. That's why. But you can rewrite that history too. You get what I'm saying? Oh, they were just nice people who they had Christian family values. It's all of this rewriting America because, like I said, America's falling apart. And with that fall, you need a new story for the future generations. And here's the problem, though. Even when you try to rewrite history in the past, it doesn't erase the things that went on in the present or the current time. So, you try to rewrite slavery, you try to rewrite only a small part of Jim Crow because you don't teach anybody about Jim Crow. That's why the Jim Crow tactics are going on to this day. That's why, as I talked about recently, deed theft, people stealing people's homes after they're paid for. And there's no protections when you target, quote unquote, when you target black folks. But, that's American history. But at the same time, if we rewrite it and say it's something else, like, people discovered these people's home that was already paid for, and they discovered it while they went to Costco to get some, some food, and then they came back, and whatever this white guy's name is the new, mayor of the house. It's crazy. But you're trying to recreate and rewrite history to indoctrinate people into America. So there's no, not just necessarily guilt, but there's no accountability. But at the same time, it's not just accountability. There's no animosity, and it's a weird thing because it enables racism to continue. Let's just act like none of this ever happened and continue to with these practices. But at the same time, are people going to go for that? No, no. But people think, well, if your kids are educated at our schools, and we're teaching them, they're going to do what we say. And it's like, no, no. Because I hate to break the news to you, but even when I was a young child, we learned all of our stuff. We didn't learn all of it. We learned the vast majority of Black history from our family and research. That's why, part of this rewriting history, that's why you don't see the PBS specials that you used to, because I think that was too much. PBS used to have a lot of documentaries about just what was going on in America in different time periods and everything, and it was all on camera, and it was black and white, um, but the information in it was detrimental to, I would say, white supremacy in America. So when PBS, it didn't. I don't even know if it's still in existence or it faded away, but the how can I say this? The the documentary style work that they were doing, it educated you, and sometimes it made you feel a certain way about America. And I think that's the same thing with like I want to say CBS, NBC, ABC. They did that too, because that's part of the underbelly of like um 60 Minutes and those shows. That was, those documentary style shows were a thing too back in the day, but you don't want that footage and information being put out in the public again. So you recreate it. That's why you remember when and using entertainment. You remember they made the movie about Harriet Tubman, and then they made a fictitious black man that would hunt Harriet Tubman down in America, like a black bounty hunter that just wanted white women. That's why they do stuff like that, because to rewrite history and go, oh no, see what, because 20 years from now but Harriet Tubman had a black man that was hunting her down all across America. It's like, bro, that is not real. You know, that's part of the, and people go, no, that's not true. Watch this. Do you remember when Spike Lee made Malcolm X? Y'all do realize, basically, um, how can I say this? The story about Martin Luther King being a philanderer, that really took it was a scene in Malcolm X that made people go, oh, Martin Luther King was cheating on his wife. It what would happen in the 60s was what J. Edgar Hoover said that he recorded him and he bugged him. And he's like, and not to accept the Nobel Peace Prize, or he's going to ruin his reputation by releasing the tapes. And Martin Luther King was like, all right, whatever. And he accepted the Nobel Peace Prize, and there was never any tapes to come out. But that scene in the movie made people 20, 30 years later, Martin Luther King was doing it. And it was one of the guys that was one of the pastors that was around at that time. He started bringing that up, but he had financial issues. So, it was like, yo, man, I need to make some money. So when I say people change history, they change history all the time. Even like, watch this, even with the OJ thing, you know, people forget about Mark Furman. They forget about actually what happened. They forget about him planting evidence. They forget that part, you know. But it's just, he's got to be. They forget about the whole mafia thing, and her owing, basically mafia drug dealers money. They forget about all of that. They forget about everything because OJ did it. It's like, oh, whatever, bro. They forget about the guy that cleaned the house was a serial killer. You get what I'm saying? So it, like, they forget about Johnny Cochran being famous for winning that case, but Johnny Cochran, I think next case that he really wanted to take on was for reparation, and then reparations for Black America, and he mysteriously died. They forget about that, you know. They forget about I forgot that white guy's name. Is it Webb? When he was talking about the police force targeting Black folks and the drug, and Iran Contra and the drugs trade in this country, and then he mysteriously died. You know, I forgot the name of the book. Is it Below? Oh, the White Horse, something. The White Horse. I forgot. The Pale White Horse. If I said it right. But all of this is actually like a smokescreen for 20, 30, 40 years from now, that people start taking history out of context. And if you chip away at it for so long and people don't set it straight, you wind up with issues. Matter of fact, I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna end. Like, I was doing a generation discussion, and they have the generations, boomers, X, millennials, zillennials, alpha. And I was saying, I'm in Gen X, and Gen X used to end at 1979. Now it's 1980. And then I saw millennials, they somehow theirs then went up again to like 82, 83. I'm like, what the fuck? People just messing it up. So people change history to make it convenient, is what I'm saying at the end of the day. But it's for a cause later on. But I'm going to leave it at that. Like, share, subscribe. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.